Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. Of course, you can follow me on Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and welcome to Friday's edition of the Doctor Who Daily. New Who versus Classic Who. Now, for people from on the outside of the kind of Whoeven universe, there is the original Doctor Who that started in 1963 to 1989, I think, which is called Classic Who. And then Russell T Davies brought it back in 2005. So basically there's been 13 series thus far of New Who. And you know, you're going to hate me for this and say I'm not a real fan. I can't remember how many seasons in the end we had of Classic Who. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in our conversation. Now, what's really funny about this, even though you get Classic Who versus New Who conversations, they're all part of the same universe, right? New Who continues off of Classic Who. It doesn't continue, there's not a cliffhanger to resolve, but basically it's the same story, it's the same character, it's the same Doctor, who's regenerated at that point 9 times, or that's what we thought anyway at that point, until things got fucking stupid. But also in the mix there is a Doctor Who movie, very imaginatively called Doctor Who the movie, starring Paul McGann as the Doctor. He's also part of this whole universe as well. So is there an argument, is there a debate, a logical debate to be had, if we could say, well, Classic Who's better than New Who, or New Who's better than Classic Who? Not really, because Doctor Who was created for a different reason than it was brought back for. Doctor Who was created to be educational for children and give them a little fantasy. It wasn't really meant to do anything apart from that, but it had a lot of imagination. Now, obviously, the production values weren't as huge as they are today. And when I say production values, you know, the people making Classic Who didn't say, oh, fuck this shit, I can't be bothered, I'm going to sit in a cupboard and compose the theme tune. No. The whole point is they didn't have the budget back then. Nothing. Television didn't have budget at all. Even films didn't have that much a bigger budget, but films have always had a bigger budget than television series. So Classic Who pretty much was made with, you know, strings and chewing gum. But it was really well done, especially in Unearthly Child, the very first Doctor Who. That still looks awesome to me. I mean, we can even for a minute here talk about an Unearthly Child versus Rose. So Unearthly Child is the very first Doctor Who episode ever in 1963, starring William Hartnell as the Doctor, and Rose stars Christopher Eccleston as the Doctor, and that is the inception of Russell T Davies' revival. It's interesting. Can we compare these episodes? Yes, I think we do. Because what the low budget in the 1963 production date doesn't do, you can't say, oh, well, it was made in the past when they didn't have this and didn't have that. So it's an unfair comparison. It's not. I would actually say an Unearthly Child is much better than Rose in a lot of ways, because an Unearthly Child doesn't really use any political elements from 1963. It's very, very kind of... an Unearthly Child, if Doctor Who didn't start in 1963 and Russell T Davies created a show called Doctor Who, and the first episode was called Rose in 2005. But basically, what I'm saying is, I've got myself mixed up here, but if Russell T Davies created Doctor Who and there was no Doctor Who in 1963, and Russell T Davies' first episode was called An Unearthly Child, there would be not many differences here. You could still have it about the two teachers being obsessed with this student and thinking she's strange and things like that, and following her and wondering about her safety. So it would still work. And I just feel that An Unearthly Child is better than Rose. I like Rose. The episode Rose does a job. It introduces you to it, you think it's cool, but it's a bit ropey and flaky in a few places. For example, when Rose starts swinging on the rope to save the Doctor, and she says, I'm rubbish at maths, I'm blah, 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 but I got A in gymnastics, whatever she says. And she's saying this to herself, but really she's saying it to us. I didn't like that. I don't hate it, but I just think it's a bit cringy, and they're just trying to justify. Basically, in films sometimes, when we see ordinary people do fantastical things, you question it, don't you? How could she do that? Well, what Russell's saying, well, I'm giving you a reason for her being able to do it. I still don't see what gymnastics have got to do. I mean, I know you climb up that rope with that powder in your hand, so I suppose it is. But anyway, let's not get tied down to that. So I just feel An Unearthly Child does a better job at launching the character, because Rose is relaunching Doctor Who, but it's actually launching it for that generation at that time. Whoever's today started watching Doctor Who with Rose when they were small children. It's important to understand that. And people in 1963, when they were kids, were watching that. And I think that Susan is a much more interesting character than Rose. Now, Susan, of course, is directly connected to the Doctor, so it's very, very different. But I think as a character, I'm more fascinated with Susan. I think she's a very interesting character, and I like her relationship with the Doctor. Now, you can't really say, I wouldn't say Hartnell's Doctor is better than Eccleston's Doctor, and I wouldn't say Eccleston's Doctor is better than Hartnell's Doctor. In fact, they're very similar in a lot of ways, because Eccleston's Doctor is very gritty, a bit darker. He's obviously very shattered with having to destroy his own planet and kill his own people. So there's an element there. Now with Hartnell's Doctor, there's an element of mystery, but he isn't particularly a nice bloke. I'd say Eccleston's Doctor is a nicer bloke than Hartnell's Doctor. He's very grouchy. He wants to abduct the teachers. He even wants to silence the teachers. And in the end, Susan has to talk him out of being that dark. But by that time, they land somewhere else. But so he's definitely, Hartnell, a much darker Doctor than Eccleston. Eccleston's a dark Doctor because of what he's been through. But we don't, and this is why I think when you look at Chibnall's Timeless Child, it would have made more sense to me if the Doctor was Tech Tae-Yoon, and the Doctor was behind all of this, and the Timeless Child was someone else. And think of this for a twist. What if the Timeless Child was Yaz, and the Doctor had experimented on Yaz, the Timeless Child, and what that would mean in the present day, and her relationship with Yaz? Then you've got a compelling situation going on. People are still going to be upset that the first Doctor was, well, it's not even the first Doctor, because Tech Tae-Yoon is a previous regeneration, so you've still got a pre-Hartnell regeneration, but at least it makes things a little bit darker and interesting. It still makes the Doctor a little bit toxic and people are not going to be happy, but at least there's some nuance within it. And so, yeah, I love An Unearthly Child, but I like the episode Rose. I think Russell does the right things because he's trying to attract a family audience. He wants to see a BBC audience as well as the family audience, and he knows automatically classic Doctor Who fans are going to come in. I'm sure when classic Doctor Who fans first saw it, they're thinking a lot of this is really good, but some of it is a bit on the cringe side, modern day in a way. But I do think most of the episode, apart from the swinging on the rope bit, is really, really good. So yeah, I don't actually think you can say, anyone saying classic Who is better than New Who can't really say that apart from their own bias. And, you know, a New Who fan can't really say it's better than classic Who, because both of them have got these elements. I mean, let's be honest, classic Who is really, really dated now. So it's not going to be for everyone because the pacing is very slow. I can watch some of the episodes, especially the 80s one with Peter Davison, because that was my introduction to the character. But I think early Doctor Who is somewhat dated now. The early Doctor Who revival is somewhat dated now as well. So there is that to that as well. But I think, look, Doctor Who is a magnificent universe, and that's not even talking about Big Finish, comic books, novelizations. So Doctor Who is amazing. And I mean, in a couple of years' time, we'll be celebrating 60 years. 60 years of one of the greatest fictional characters and universes ever created. It was here before Star Wars. It was here before Star Trek. Or was it here before Star Trek? I'm not sure. Maybe they started at the same time. Maybe one day we'll do a video. What's better, Star Wars or Doctor Who? What's better, Star Wars or Star Wars, Star Trek or Doctor Who? That will be an interesting thing to do. I think that will be a very, very interesting conversation. Maybe I'll do it on tomorrow's Doctor Who Daily. So ultimately, classic Who isn't better than the Doctor Who revival, and the Doctor Who revival isn't better than Classic Who. Love what you love, don't worry about what you don't like, and focus on the stuff that you enjoy. This has been the Doctor Who Daily. I'm Mick, your host with the most. Just ask your girlfriends and your wives. Like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you never miss this perfection. And I'll see you again tomorrow with even more Doctor Who Daily. Until then, au revoir, goodbye, and auf Wiedersehen.